right? Florida, where I think that was, I don't want to even call it a rejuvenation, but almost a period of time where last year throughout the playoffs and winning a Stanley Cup, people finally grew to appreciate everything he does, right? To put him in the spotlight on that sort of stage to say, oh my goodness, like we've always known this guy is a good defenseman. But to see him at this stage of his career doing the things that he does, particularly on the defensive end of the ice, that's what makes him so invaluable. And the leadership element, the experience that he brings to the Leafs blue line, they are so fortunate to have him as a third pairing guy that can play up and in almost in any situation that you need him. And don't you feel really good about having a 5'6" on your blue line that is OEL
Oh,
and
absolutely.
Simone Benoit? Like it's unbelievable. And that is one of the reasons why, if you're a Leaf fan today and they're getting ready to face Florida in round two, you feel a little bit more confident. Your belief is greater than it was 2 years ago when these two teams played, because the blue line is littered with experience, with talent, with guys that can play in a variety of situations, guys that have playoff pedigree. They haven't had a blue line like this in the core four era. And OEL is a huge component of all that. You saw him contribute some of that offense in round one, which is an area where this blue line as a whole has struggled historically, not just this season, but specifically this year under Berube, where they've played a more, I don't want, I guess, a more conservative style. They're not jumping up into the play as much, right? Not joining the rush. They're trying to make sure they stay home and protect their end of the ice as defensemen. To get some offense from your blue line in round one against Ottawa was huge. And if you can get anything from those guys in round two, you got to feel good. You got to feel good about the Leafs' chances. And I think this blue line is really well equipped to play against this Florida team. They have the right combination of size, intelligence, and experience to make Florida uncomfortable in this type of series.
No, I agree because see, I mean overall, even this season, and you count and you factor in and you counter also what they've done in the playoffs. Under Berube, they've looked like a much different team than they did under Keefe.
For sure. No, for sure. I mean, stylistically, it's so much different. It's funny. That's actually one of the things I'm really fascinated about and curious to see within the context of this series. The Craig Berube system, in a sense, is very similar to Paul Maurice hockey,
Yeah.
right? It's very much dump it in, dump and chase, play physical, block shots, be defensively sound and responsible. Okay, that's great. So the problem there might be, and this is where, if you're a Leaf fan, there are concerns. Well, Florida just executes it better. They really do.
Yeah.
They're more accomplished, and their personnel is better equipped to execute that system more consistently. It worked for the Leafs in the regular season. It's worked for the Leafs in round one, right? It helps keep in terms of maintaining a structure and keeping you as a team composed. That's great. But what happens when you run into a team that plays a similar style? Like, there's no team in hockey since Paul Maurice has taken over the Florida Panthers. That was after the 22 season, I believe. No team in hockey that dumps it in more, that plays more physical than the Florida Panthers. There's no team in the NHL that wins more puck battles, nearly 56% in the NHL, than the Florida Panthers. And the Leafs are trying very much to emulate that type of style. The problem becomes if you run into a team that does it better, and naturally, you're probably not going to come out on the right end of things here. What I think Toronto needs to do to an extent here is, I think it goes without saying, the biggest X factor, if you will, for the Toronto Maple Leafs is, can you score goals? Can your offense be the juggernaut-like offense that we've seen at times, because your talent, your top-end talent, is so overwhelmingly good? And that puts a lot of pressure on your core guys, your Matthews, your Marner, your Nylander, your Tavares, Matthew Nyes. It puts a lot of pressure on them. But if those guys have a good series, if those guys can put the puck in the net, you're going to feel a heck of a lot better about your chances playing against a Florida team that is going to try and wear you down physically, and they are going to play a very simple meat and potatoes game. Craig Berube talks about north-south game all the time. No team does it better than the Florida Panthers.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's just it. I think they've got a really good sort of thing going there. With the Panthers. But I think the Leafs are built. I think the Leafs are ready to face them. I think they are.
That's the hope. That's the hope. I would say,
Yes.
the only thing, so regular season is obviously a different animal,
Yes.
but every time these two teams played in the regular season this year, 4 meetings, the Leafs won one, and the lone victory came in their, I think it was their penultimate meeting or their last meeting. It was right towards the end of the regular season, within the last month of the regular season. There was no Matthew Tkachuk in that game. Brad Marchand was still trying to get acclimated to his role with the Florida Panthers coming over from Boston. So there were a lot of moving parts for the Panthers. No Aaron Ekblad, who's not playing tonight, but again, he was suspended 20 games for PED at the time. So there were just a lot of moving parts. In saying all that, every matchup, including that game, we saw the Leafs struggle against the Panthers team that was able to lean on them physically and limit their time and space. This series, fundamentally, is about time and space. If you can carve out more space in the greasy areas, there's a good chance you're going to generate more offense. And that's where the Leafs, historically, whenever they play a team that tries to lean on them, they've struggled. Even this year against Florida, those games, unlike any other matchup, like they played Tampa, they always seem to fare much better against the Lightning, more comfortable in that environment. No matter who the opponent was, the one team that always felt like it was a major buzzsaw, it was the Florida Panthers. The one team when you watch them play where you thought, this looks more like playoff hockey than regular season hockey, it was the Florida Panthers. And so that's why I put a little bit more stock in the regular season sample size for this particular matchup than any other matchup the Leafs could have potentially drawn. It's because we've seen the Panthers do it successfully like they intend to do it in the playoffs. And that's where time and space, if there's anything, Ali, time and space is what I think will dictate the terms of engagement and what we see in this series.
There you go. Yes. And Dallas has looked good. I was surprised to see they beat the Avalanche there on Saturday there.
I think Dallas is peaking, man. Dallas is starting to fire on all cylinders and hit their stride at the right time. Look, we all know Saturday is going to go down in Stanley Cup playoff lore as the Mikko Rantanen game. Hat trick against his old team in the third period. Unbelievable stuff, right? Like,
yep.
Storybook. But now factor in Dallas is going to get even healthier. They just beat a Colorado team that loaded up at the trade deadline. Nathan McKinnon was so defeated post-game, not just because they lost, right? But he said it. We lost, and they didn't even have their defenseman and arguably their best forward. No Miro Heiskanen and no Jason Robertson. And still, the Avs couldn't get the job done against the Dallas Stars. And now, what we get in round two is this ultra fascinating, interesting, compelling matchup, whatever adjective you want to use, between Winnipeg and Dallas. And two goalies in Ottinger and Hellebuck that both have their own respective playoff demons. Hellebuck is probably deeper and much worse. Ottinger seems like he falls asleep for the first 4 games of a series before he wakes up. But you've got so many layers to this entire series coming up between those two teams. And I've noticed I was looking at this today because I was interested in it.
Yes.
Do you know, Ali, who the current favorite is to win the Stanley Cup? According to Vegas, what the betting odds are saying.
You know what? I'm gonna take a wild guess at this.
Okay.
And I'm gonna say, I'm gonna give you 2. It's either the Stars or the Golden Knights.
It is Dallas. It's actually, interestingly enough, Vegas is further down than I thought they would be. I think they're like 5th or 6th on the list. It's pretty fascinating. But Dallas is number 1. Dallas is number 1. I think they either have just a slight edge over Florida, or Florida's right there matched at the same. It was plus 400 for Dallas. I remember that. So the Stars now, according to Vegas, after beating Colorado and with some reinforcements potentially on the way, now the favorite to win the Stanley Cup. And we should remember, they're playing the President's Trophy winners, right? They're going to face the President's Trophy winning Winnipeg Jets in round 2, and yet they're favored. Another one that threw me off too, Washington. Washington won the East, first place in the East, right? Best record in the Eastern Conference, win their division. And they took care of Montreal in 5 games. Montreal, a team that looked really feisty, played great hockey.
Yeah.
Inspired hockey. They beat them in 5 games. The Washington Capitals are underdogs against the Carolina Hurricanes. How does that make sense? The Washington Capitals have the second worst odds to win the Stanley Cup. How does that make sense? It's interesting how Vegas interprets these things and how they look at it. But no, like I think Dallas is legitimate, no question. They're legitimate. You watch that team, they're great, and I think they showed a ton of character and fight. They legitimately faced adversity, right? Like they lost 7 straight coming into the playoffs. They started the postseason looking like they were going to bow out very quickly, and they didn't stand a chance. And then they managed to find a way to battle back, show tons of heart. Their best player stepped up in the key moments, and they are dangerous. They are starting to find their rhythm, hit their stride when it really matters most. When the chips are down, they're going to be a tough out, no question about it. Selfishly, I'd love to see Winnipeg, make it through, because, I feel like there's just a lot of negativity, pessimism surrounding the Jets all the time. So I would like to see the Jets make their run, right? Make it count that they won the President's Trophy and were the best team in hockey all season long. Selfishly, I'd like to see that happen. But Dallas, very, very good team. And Pete DeBoer.
I was just going to mention him, yeah.
Ali, what do you got to do? 9-0 in Game 7s. How is that even possible?
Wow.
How is that possible?
That's nuts.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah. I think we've got some interesting matches. I think it's Washington and Carolina, I believe.
Correct. Washington, Carolina, and obviously the Leafs and Panthers.
Leafs, Panthers. And then you've got the Stars and the Jets, as well as you've got the Oilers facing
Vegas.
The Vegas Golden Knights.
Yeah.
There you go. These are like go ahead.
No, that series there, because we've touched on a lot of the other teams. That one there with Vegas and Edmonton.
Oh yeah.
It could really, like that. You talk about a series that to me feels like a bit of a coin flip. That one might be it. Because if Edmonton, despite what they did in round 1 and how they came back, don't they still feel like a team that has so many holes and flaws?
They do, yeah.
Right? Like the goaltending, Calvin Pickard, great story. He comes in after Stuart Skinner loses the first 2 games. You win 4 straight. Awesome. Okay, still a question mark, right? He still let in a lot of goals and some bad ones at that. Question mark. The blue line, Evan Bouchard, thank you for coming out to the party. You scored some goals. That's awesome. That's awesome. But, man, at times did he look suspect on the defensive end of the ice. The only thing that really, really makes Edmonton feel good as a team that you're going to throw your support behind, it's the fact that they got 97 and 29. Like, anytime you got McDavid and Draisaitl, hey, we're talking about the elite of the elite, and it makes you feel a lot better about their chances no matter who they're playing against. And then Vegas on the flip side, it was a very difficult, challenging series for them against Minnesota. Minnesota's top guys really performed at a high level, and Vegas, frankly, their best guys didn't really show up until the end, right? Like Jack Eichel finally breaks through and scores a goal. It was in the clinching game. That's awesome. They needed it, but their blue line looked a little bit old and slow. Aiden Hill got better as the series went along, but you still got questions about that. I feel like that one is a bit of a toss-up in terms of trying to handicap how that might unfold, who has the edge in certain areas. It really depends to me on what version of Vegas shows up. If you get the really good Vegas, it's going to be a heck of a tough series for the Edmonton Oilers.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, all of these series, I'm really looking forward to them, because it's going to be, you know what, as an NHL fan, I think this is going to be really, really, it's going to be like really exciting.
Don't you think that for even, Commissioner Gary Bettman, Deputy Commissioner Bill Daley,
yeah,
the way that round 1 ended, is that not the most ideal sort of way to end things and proceed to round 2?
It is. It really
It,
is.
it's just great for visibility of the sport, the exposure, the popularity of the sport. I know everybody, year after year talks about how the 2 weeks during round one of the playoffs are by far the best thing in sports. And
Yeah.
I mean, man, how can you dispute it? Right? How can you
Yeah.
dispute that? We just watched, the NBA and the Stanley Cup playoffs run concurrently. In the NBA, yeah, sure, we had a game 7 last night, between Houston and Golden State. That's fine and all, but did we see any level of drama remotely close to what you saw in almost every single series in the Stanley Cup playoffs?
Not at all.
You can't compare. You cannot compare. Right? Never mind a double overtime game 7. Winnipeg comes back from 3-1. They score with 2 seconds left. Never mind that.
Yeah.
Look at what you had on Saturday with Mikko Rantanen. That in and of itself was crazy. You had even Washington beating Montreal in 5 games. All the games were entertaining.
Yeah.
The atmosphere at Bell Center, unbelievable. So there's just it really is special. And I think this time of year, and specifically the 2 weeks that we just lived through and experienced, that does wonders to sell the game. And it's always a very, very positive endorsement for the NHL in general.
Yeah, and
That is
I loved the Four Nations this year.
the Four Nations was, I mean, that might go down as, when we look back, it might go down as one of the more influential events that we've seen that the NHL has ever staged.
Yeah, I want to see them replace the All Star game with the Four Nations. I think they'd be
Well,
much. I think that would be really good if they did that.
I'm totally with you on that. I wonder what the plan and the intention is. I think it was, they're gonna, what is it? Every couple of years we're gonna have a World Cup of hockey. I think they're still working through the kinks of the scheduling and where it's gonna fit and slot in. And obviously, then every biannually we'll also have the Olympics involved, and that's fantastic. That's all big for it. But because we waited so long in between best on best competition, the Four Nations is always going to be a really special event that we're going to look back on and hold on to. Because I don't think we're going to see another tournament that's branded just as like the Four Nations face off. It's going to be World Cup of Hockey,
Yeah.
and that's great. But the Four Nations face off, even if it's just that one time they handed out the trophy and the medals, it doesn't matter because that tournament happened at such a crucial time for not just the sport, but at such a crucial time for people in our country, for Canadians, for Americans, for people that observe the political climate, understanding what was going
Yes.
on at that time. It added to that aspect of competition. And that's going to be difficult to replicate at any point in the future. Next year, the Olympics are going to happen. The Olympics will be, again, barring something unforeseen, it'll be more about the hockey. It's going to be more
Yeah.
about, this is the first time all these countries are competing for Olympic gold again, and that is awesome. And it's about Sidney Crosby playing in his last Olympics. It's about, the Americans with their young upcoming, or that they're finally on the Olympic stage. Great stories all around, but it's not going to have that sort of added element of personal satisfaction, in the sense of it attracted a broader community. That the Four Nations did that, and that'll never be replicated again. It just won't. And that tournament worked wonders for the NHL from an exposure standpoint, drawing more eyeballs. What we saw in that first Canada-US game, where the guys all dropped the gloves and we had 3 fights in the first 9 seconds, like, it just became a spectacle, unlike anything we've seen in a long time for the sport of hockey.
There we go. Yes, this is all going to be fun. It's going to be fun. I should also ask you. I want to also touch on the Jays. I haven't been following too much of the Jays right now with the NHL playoffs. But what about? But the big thing is the extension of Guerrero. What were your? Did you feel that the front office had to do that?
In a sense, yes. So let's think about it even this way.
Okay.
So the Blue Jays right now, wear my Blue Jays hat. But Blue Jays right now, today's an off day. Back in action, starting a 3-game series against the Angels out west, and then they have Seattle. They're 16-18 through 34 games. Okay?
Yikes.
Think about what the conversation and the narrative would have been today, let's say, after they lost 2 of 3 to Cleveland at home, where they blew the game on Saturday, were up 3-1 with 2 outs in the 9th inning. Bullpen lets it go again yesterday as well. What would the conversation be like surrounding Vladimir Guerrero Jr. on May the 5th if the Jays were, with the Jays being 16-18 and he hadn't signed his contract? It would be pretty dark.
Yes.
It would be pretty grim, and there would be a lot of noise. You'd have people talking about trade packages. You'd have people talking about, never mind just him, you'd have people talking about the other veterans on the team, talking about Bo Bichette's future, and it would be a running conversation. So the fact that he signed an extension and he put pen to paper, at the very least, it puts to bed this conversation about what do you do? Trade him, lock him to free agency. That gets tiring. We already did that exercise for a whole season essentially last year, and of course leading up to this one. And there were, depending on the day of the week, sometimes there's optimism, sometimes there's pessimism surrounding it. Well, it's done. And that's what's most important. And for the fan base, at least now optically, the front office can present an image and a message that makes it seem like, hey, we are really committed to wanting to build a winner. That is our goal. We're trying to build a winner. And Vladdy is a huge part of that. They don't have another young star in the making. They don't have another young star in their pipeline. They just don't. And it was almost like, even from Vlad's perspective, there was a perfect confluence of circumstances that enabled him to get paid a very lucrative amount of money, but to get paid because the Jays were also desperate. As much as Vladdy wanted his money and he wanted to go to the highest bidder and make his money, well, the Jays were also sitting there and they're desperate because they need a face. They need somebody to represent what the franchise is, to be a fixture. And at the very least, they can now at least point to Vladdy and say, well, he's it. And he's here for the long haul, and we're going to continue to build around him, and we have time to get it done correctly. So that's why it was important, both in the interim and the long term.
But I think the bigger question will be, is Shapiro and Atkins' future? I actually feel in a lot of, and I've said this before here on air, that the two of them will always be together. If one goes, the other is going.
I think I tend to agree with you. I think there is a world, though, where it depends on the motives of Mark Shapiro. What is Mark Shapiro's end game? What does he want? Right? Does he want to be in this job for the next 5, 6, 7 years, whatever? Is that what he envisions for himself? Or does he envision something bigger? Right? There were rumors and speculation that before MLSE landed on Keith Pelley as their president, their CEO, they potentially looked at Mark Shapiro, and that Mark Shapiro was very much, certainly interested in potentially that opportunity. Something as that would represent the next chapter, the next phase in his career as a pro sports executive. So does he want to be in this spot? What else is there left for him to accomplish apart from fielding a winning baseball team? That would be the sole motivation that's left for Mark Shapiro. I want to be a part of the solution. Oh, not just building the stadium up and adding all these luxury suites and different amenities. That's great, right? The stadium's beautiful. It's awesome. He did a great job with that, and he deserves credit for it. Now, the one thing that would be left to motivate him is I'm tired of us being mediocre. I'm tired of the fact that I have to hear people talk about us not winning a playoff game. Can we go out and deliver success in the playoffs? Success in the playoffs, meaning we win games, we win series, and heck, goodness forbid, maybe one day you win a World Series. But that is what I think I'd be most interested in getting an answer on. What motivates him? For me, that is the only scenario where I could see a departure of some kind between those two individuals. It's if Mark Shapiro makes the decision that he wants to win, and that is something that is now driving him. I've done everything else. I really want to have a baseball team that is great. We want to field a competitive team that is winning and competing and challenging for championships. Well, that might entail one of two things. Either you move on from Ross Atkins, or you keep Ross Atkins, and the other flip side is, hey, there's something bigger and better out there that then will incentivize me to leave the president's role with the Toronto Blue Jays. That's where I come back to with all of this. But if you ask me even today, last year it felt like things were tenuous, clearly, with how the season unfolded, with where the contract situations were. But this front office went out and their offseason was pretty decent. They are struggling right now from a lack of depth within. That is evident, and that falls on their shoulders. But look at the moves they made. Pretty decent. And they signed Vladimir Guerrero Jr. I feel like maybe, just maybe, there's an element of security with those guys that even to us as fans, we sit here and we don't understand, we can't comprehend it, but it does feel like they're in a pretty decent spot right now.
Yeah.
Does it not?
Yes, very much. Yeah, but I think though, but see, but if Mark leaves, right, and let's see, and there were also rumors, I think, that he was gonna be, that he wanted, that he was next up for the commissioner's job too of MLB.
You know what? That I mean, I wouldn't be stunned at that either. 100%. Talking about a life like that, that's a baseball lifer right there, and a guy that is known for being really, really intelligent and very forward thinking. Loves the big challenge of trying to take a big project, and then actually execute it on a micro level. That I don't know, that does seem really interesting. I hadn't fully honestly heard a lot about that.
I thought that was around like last year or something. I hadn't heard anything recently about it, but
that's a rule though that it wouldn't shock me one bit. It wouldn't shock me one bit. That's a role I could 100% see a guy like him potentially trying to step into. That type of role, that opportunity, would he find it appealing? I don't know, but it does strike me as something that might be interesting for him, and one that would stand out as something he would be open to, possibly.
And that might even, do you feel though, and we'll sort of kind of, do you feel that it has to do, do you feel that Atkins is Shapiro's sort of security kind of guy, in the sense that Shapiro's kind of keeping him around as the GM just so that if he goes, he can take him, when he goes, he can take him with him, and hey, whatever role he ends up in, that bigger role, he can say, look, here you are, this is where I'm going, and you're going to be in this role. You're going to be my right-hand man kind of thing.
I think he likes, I think they both enjoy the element of continuity. I really think Mark values that a lot with how he builds things. It's, especially with his background in Cleveland, as much as they're spending money here, in Toronto, he's got far more resources than he ever had in Cleveland, right? Think about, never mind just the baseball side of things where they're spending money on the roster, but look at all the projects that he's executed in the stadium. That costs a heck of a lot of money, right? You have to talk people into that. You have to sell it. You have to pitch it and sell it. And he's done that effectively. I think he's one of those guys that really does value assembling a small circle of people that he feels he can really trust. And clearly Ross is one of those guys. So he almost, in a way, and in how this group operates, it's a lot of small ball mentality in a big market environment, right? Coming from Cleveland, where you have to try and find every efficiency and every small advantage that you can, they've taken that mentality and they've now transitioned and brought it over to what you see in Toronto and how they go about their business. Nothing wrong with that, right? Nothing wrong with that. But I definitely get a sense that the familiarity aspect of it is comforting for a lot of these guys, right? So I feel like it's not impossible. I will say this. I would never suggest it's impossible for Mark to retain and stay in this role while moving on from Ross. Would never say that, because I at the end of the day, it's a business. And if Ross if Mark, really wanted to see this thing through, but it entailed him being asked to move on from Ross. If push came to shove, do I believe it would happen? Probably, right? Probably. I could definitely envision that. Now, in saying that, unless he's fully pushed or all of the options have been exhausted, is there something comforting about him partnering with Ross Atkins on this side of things? Absolutely. I do feel like that is the case, right? I think they see the game similarly. They share similar views, and their vision tends to be aligned. If their vision wasn't aligned, well, quick answer. I mean, Ross Atkins probably isn't in charge at this particular point in time. John Schneider might not be their manager at this particular point in time. But because there's a shared vision in place and there's a subscription to the philosophy, that's where I think those two are sort of attached and joint at the hip.
Oh, there you go. You know what? It will be a lot of fun. And Daniele, you know what? You and I, you know what? Let's talk sports again real soon. I hope we can do this again. This was a lot of fun.
Oh, my pleasure, man. No, absolutely. Anytime, happy to jump on. Thank you again for the invitation. It was a heck of a conversation. Really enjoyed it. Very enjoyable.
Yeah, me too. We're gonna let's do it again. You know, maybe closer to the trade deadline or something. We can the MLB trade deadline. Then maybe we can look at something.
You got me, man. 100%. Yeah, absolutely. Sign me up.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
All right. Appreciate you. Thanks,
Sounds
Allie.
good.
Thank you so much for listening and/or watching Broadcast Map. To learn more about the show, please visit broadcastmap.ca. While you're there, subscribe to the newsletter so you never miss an update. Besides, it's free. Enter your email address and hit subscribe right on the